People who graduated with bad grades, where are you now? Story 1. I cheated my way through all 4 years of high school by abusing the system. I never cheated by plagiarizing or anything like that. I simply realized that the heart was divided into 4 9-week segments. The first 3, if you did absolutely nothing, they would still give you a 40% average grade. The last 9 weeks, you got nothing guaranteed. I also realized that you needed a combined 241% score to pass with a D average. My score allowed that for graduation. So throughout the year, I would carefully plan which classes I would actually try on and which I could get away with lazing off on. I inevitably graduated by doing just the bare minimum. The realization hit me, though, that all the work I was doing into carefully tracking my averages and grades was almost as much work as actually performing well in my classes. By the time I was ready to start college, I hadn't put any thought into what I wanted to do in life because I was so focused on cheating in high school and being lazy outside of school. The kicker was that my SAT scores were amazing, and combined with my extracurricular activities, I was able to get a full ride for college. However, that abuse of the system didn't fly in university, so I actually had to try. But because I had gotten so used to not studying that I had problems trying to do it, I ended up changing majors twice through college, and in the end, didn't graduate due to unrelated circumstances. I was in a near-fatal accident that required a year of physical therapy and whatnot. The biggest problem is that I'm by no means unintelligent, but my intelligence that people told me I had in school was just surface-level stuff, and I have no real talents in any field. Had I taken the time while at school to fully try, I may have found something that I was remarkable in, but alas, I didn't. However, 2 years ago, I buckled down on learning the English language better and have taken a few online courses to help further myself. I actually have a job working as a script editor and closed caption coordinator for NBC, and I'm using my skills for that. I have a beautiful wife and a beautiful newborn daughter, and I'm able to provide for them and keep a roof over our heads and food in our stomachs, and even extras like nights out or vacations. But I often think about where I'd be if I had taken more time in high school. I always let it go because I worry that I might not have met my wife and wouldn't have her or my daughter today. And I do not want to let go of my happiness that I've found. I did find some skill from school. I was in a band. My school had 4 bands: marching, symphonic, jazz, and steel drum. I was in all 4 as a drummer. I still use my drumming skills as the drummer in a metal band and have done some church drumming as well before my job required me to work Sundays. Story 2. I dropped out of school pretty young. Technically, I was still enrolled, I just didn't attend. Troubled home life, and undiagnosed autism. I adored learning and would have been really happy to just be assigned a room and books so I could just learn on my own way without being overwhelmed by the noise and social events of classroom learning. I always wanted to be a social scientist and had an innate fascination with the subject. At the time, autism in girls wasn't really a thing, so when I had panic attacks in class and begged to learn in a quiet space on my own, everyone just thought I was being difficult. My school had a really messed up way of looking at things. The social aspect of school was considered so important that they'd rather a kid just not attend school entirely than miss out on any of it. They didn't say that this is how they viewed it, but that was the outcome ultimately. So I slipped through the net like so many people with undiagnosed autism and basically didn't attend school from the ages of 13 to 16, save for an odd school meeting. But I kept pursuing education after school, with several more instances of dropping out, and found that college and eventually university were much more manageable. I graduated with a first-class honors undergraduate degree and an Outstanding Achievement Award for attaining the highest grade on my degree. I'm now 29 and completing my master's in social research at a London university and will be applying to PhD program soon. Sometimes I get upset at all of the lost time. Maybe if I was diagnosed as a kid and accommodations were made, I'd be finishing up my PhD now. But on the other hand, I've been on a different kind of adventure, and I've learned a lot about managing and enjoying life with autism. I'm probably more well-rounded now than I would have been if my life followed an arbitrary plan. And hey, turns out secondary school education isn't always destiny in the UK, so that's pretty cool. Story 3. I have a PhD in biochemistry now. I barely got into a state school for my high school grades. I don't even know what it is I do exactly now. I'm kind of a consultant and high-end tech support for medical practices, Basically, I'm the resident antibiotic resistance expert and have to keep up to date on literature in the field and relay that to the doctors, as well as other topics. But I also set up and oversee maintenance on electronic medical records and office networks, which can get funky with HIPAA and other locations, having multiple dedicated T1 lines to a few locations. I actually outsource this real work to people who know what they're doing, but I oversee it. The high-end tech support part is for a bunch of lab equipment, mainly dealing with blood chemistry analysis. I don't really run any samples myself anymore because I live remotely and I have a guy that does the day-to-day, and he's good with the machines, arguably better than me. I'm kind of second string on diagnosis and fixing the stuff because I'm not there. My job seems pretty useless, but I'm on call to make it all work together. I'm the only one that knows the network and the science machines and how they interact. So I guess that's really what I get paid for, is just being the only guy that actually knows what's going on. I think I've spent an hour over the last few months actually working. The main office is having a few people retire, and I will lose the job, but they're continuing to pay me until that happens, so I need to find a new job or something. Story 4. I got a few A's in high school, mostly B's and C's, a couple of D's over the 4 years, and failed one class. I flunked out of university. I don't think I passed a single course in my last semester there. I lived in a couple of poopy apartments, worked in a couple of poopy call centers, drank poopy alcohol, and hung out with poopy people. The only positive thing in my life was my cat. Eventually, I got tired of everything being poopy. I called up my parents, and they agreed to let me move back into their place to go to college. I went back to school at 26, graduated at 27 with A's, and got hired in my field before I technically finished my course. I'm 31 now. I live with my partner. We're getting married whenever we get around to it. We have 2 kids and bought a house in 2018. My cat is no longer the only good thing in my life, though some days he's definitely my favorite child. Bad grades aren't really the thing that makes or breaks a life. It's the passivity, the lack of motivation that causes those bad grades that'll give you a hard time later in life. The focus needs to be less on the letter on your report card and more on the skills you need to get there. If you fail 11th grade ancient history, it's not going to ruin your life. If you spend your days doing absolutely nothing and never develop the skills you need to get out of bed in the morning and go to school or work, you're going to be in for a rough time. Story 5. I did pretty well in high school, mostly B's, some A's, I think 1 or 2 C's, so I went to a good college. For a variety of reasons, I ended up mostly getting C's there, though. I did graduate. How it's impacted my life? I had to give up my semester abroad. The schools I wanted to go to all required a higher GPA. Then, after graduation, going to graduate school never felt like a sure bet. First is the hurdle of getting one to get me in, surmountable, and second is the issue of not being sure if I would pass or not. So I didn't go to graduate school. While I make a good income, my job isn't super interesting. I married someone who is more successful, so I live in a pricier neighborhood and have found myself at bars with people with alphabet soups after their names, and I find this sort of depressing for me. I think about other lines of work, but they mostly require graduate school and or pay less than I make, so I stick with what I do. It's not bad, it's comfortable, but I do worry that my kids will think of me and my middling life once they get old enough to become aware of these things. That said, I have a beautiful wife, 2 great kids, 2 cars, a nice house, some savings, and a retirement account, so it's really hard to complain. Story 6. School was never my thing. Was always bored in class, hated lectures, was good with anything hands-on related, automotive, cosmetology, gym, and any labs in the sciences. I actually failed my religion class in grade 12, on purpose though. Overall grades were usually between D+ to B-. Dropped out of college after finishing 1 semester, started working full-time right away, went between a few different jobs, currently between the same company for over 2 years in the construction sector. I bought a condo by the age of 22, and 2 years later, I'm still there, happily living it up all by myself. I paid off my first car and traded in that car for a brand new SUV. I also have a weekend job, paid in cash. I make my own hours and can choose if I even want to go or not. It's great. This summer, I'm taking a month off to travel with my best friend. I still have to save for it, but I'm not at all struggling to get by. Life is good. But I sure as heck got lucky with my situation. If it wasn't for who I know, then I'm sure I'd still be waiting tables. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video and have a wonderful day. Story 7. I graduated from college with a 2.13 cumulative GPA. My goal in college was just to get a degree, so I did. If that was all I wanted to do, so be it. That may be fine, and I would never see any kind of karma for that. However, 10 years later, 2018, I decided I wanted to go back and get a master's degree to qualify me for a career change. I had a terrible time applying for grad school because a lot of them required a 3.0 undergrad cumulative GPA. I was denied time and time again. Finally, I wrote an appeal letter to the Dean of Admissions explaining why he should let me into school. Reasons included things like the fact that my priorities have changed. I know I was a poor student then, but I'm now paying my own way through grad school to provide for my family. Not the same person I was, etc. They let me in, and I graduated in May with a 3.65 grad cumulative GPA. Couldn't be prouder. It's been a ton of work, but don't feel like being a bad undergrad or high school student should limit you. Story 8. I'm a professor, actually. I was a C student all through high school and university. I dropped out and worked and traveled around for a while, trying to find what I wanted to do. When I went back for my BA, I found a new love for learning. Went and did my master's and PhD soon after that, and then landed a gig teaching a lot of kids that were like me, and even more that were far better in school. Little did they know, personally I'm glad I was a crap student. It helps me empathize with a wide range of students and meet them where they are. Grades aren't intellect. They're a reflection of motivation, perhaps, but not necessarily understanding, creativity, conceptualization, or critical thought. Story 9. I was a below-average student, never really got anything higher than a C in most of the important classes. Looking back now, it's a miracle that I even graduated, because I rarely did my homework. Went to a trade school right after high school, but not doing anything related to what I studied in trade school. Currently married, working in IT. Remember, most people commenting here are the exception, not the rule. Pay attention in school and don't think that because a few people on the internet were able to make something out of themselves, that's how it'll be. I know quite a few people who were in similar positions in high school and still struggle to this day. Story 10. I did quite poorly in high school, took an extra year and got into a mediocre university in Canada. Continued to give zero cares, was doing so poorly I was required to withdraw for 1 year without being allowed to attend any university. Spent the year out of college, came back with a little more motivation. Ended up graduating with a 2.6 CGPA, was taken on by an abusive graduate supervisor and got my MSc. Ate some doo-doo, but it was worth it. Now I work at a hospital doing research at a pretty decent pay rate. Just bought a house in Toronto with my significant other. Not doing too shabby. Never give up. It's your character that gets you ahead. Story 11. Barely graduated high school here. Only reason I did is because my mom grew up with the principal. I dropped out after 1 semester in college, started working at a movie theater, tearing tickets for $5.25 an hour. Fast forward through 15 years of poopy hours, working weekends and holidays, transfers, and promotions in retail management. So now I'm 35, I'm the COO of a furniture company, I make a little under $300,000 a year, and work about 35 hours a week. Story 12. I've always been incredibly lazy. Graduated high school in the bottom half of my class, but got a 1540 on the SAT. Got a mechanical engineering degree from a top 25 engineering school, but graduated with a 2.7 GPA, which made it as worthless as an online underwater basket weaving degree. Now I'm an industrial engineer, and I'm good at it because helping other people be lazy and work smarter, not harder, is the goal of my job. Story 13. Didn't officially even graduate due to not being able to pass the math tax test, Texas exit testing. Ended up getting my diploma from a private school, which had some weird loophole. Anyways, I make almost 6 figures now with a really good job, which I have a love and hate relationship with. It's not about grades, it's about networking and who you know. I didn't spend a dime on college either. Story 14. Retired, didn't actually graduate. Day I stepped out of school, I took off. Never found out I failed 2 grades for a few months. Picked up a good union job in a trade, worked 35 years, got a good pension, and retired at 57. Have no debts. The secret is no secret. Only borrow what you can afford to, buy a house, car, etc., and pay off all credit cards every month. Story 15. I'm an underground miner. The work is extremely physical in temperatures exceeding 32 Celsius, but it allows someone like me to make $120,000 a year without education. So the old, you're going to end up working in a goddamn mine if you don't pull these grades up, ended up coming true, but with an unexpectedly high compensation. Story 16. Not what was asked, but alternatively, I graduated with good grades. I've dropped out of 3 different programs, back in school for the 4th time, barely passing, still living with my parents, and have no idea what I'm going to do after I graduate from my 1-year program. That literally doesn't open any doors of opportunity for me. Story 17. For any school kids browsing these comments, remember that the evidence will be skewed by the fact that people commenting here actively want to comment. There are obviously exceptions to rules, but do your homework. The internet is not a good metric for how you should live your life. Story 18. Got a job right out of school, working as an engineer. I've been at the same position since around 10 years, and my salary has increased $36K per year in that time. I like to think that I'm fairly successful in my role here. My grades sucked because I was a poopy student, not because I wasn't smart enough to do well. Story 19. Construction superintendent, upper 6 figures, 9th grade education. Screw you, Mrs. McCurdy. Do you mean upper 6 figures as in close to 7 figures? Oh, I wish. Just a little shy of 200K. Story 20. 3.5 in high school, 2.5 bachelor's. Now making 150K plus after several years of working my butt off. Most coworkers are 10 plus years older. Just got my master's with a 3.9. Undergrad grades don't really matter once you've gotten a decent entry-level job. No experience with non-college routes, obviously. Story 21. A business owner. Don't read too much into that. Luck played an enormous role in this stupid journey of mine, and freaking heck did I luck out. Some of you are walking around with frick all because I got your luck. Give it back, I need it. Story 22. I dropped out of high school after failing junior year twice and got my GED. I'm an electrician now, making a decent living. Married with a baby and a house and a fairly new truck. Bills get paid, and I have some disposable income. The trades can be good to you if you work smart and learn hard. Story 23. I graduated college with a 2.34 GPA. That's pretty bad. Got a decent job and started a career path. Went back for a master's 15 years later and finished with a 4.0 in grad school. My jobs got progressively better, and I'm doing pretty well now, 6-figure salary. Story 24. Not as bad off as I thought I'd be. Have a nice apartment, a great girlfriend, and a son. Money is tight, but things are getting better, and we're on our way to finally being able to save. All told, I'm very happy with how this slacker, more or less dropout turned out. Story 25. 40 miles from my hometown, in my own house, with my own pup and bird. A few toys to ride around. I make about $70K a year, and the only debt I have is the house, car, and a credit card I'm paying down. I still feel like a frick up from high school, though. Story 26. My brother passed away in my final year of high school, and it ruined me. My final score was abysmal. Over half a decade later, and I'm nearly in my final year of my teaching degree. It's never too late to continue your studies. Story 27. Chief engineer of a hotel, 6-figure salary. My grades were barely passing. In fact, I wasn't going to graduate, but my mathematics teacher said if I washed his boat, he would pass me. I washed that boat sparkling clean. Story 28. I was a solid C student in high school, went to college for 4 years, but didn't graduate. I now own an advertising billboard company. Story 29. In my career field, but in a dead-end position. I feel you, brother. I want to be happy in my fields, but there's always more, right? Story 30. President of the United States. Many people say you got the best grades. Better than anyone can imagine, sir. Story 31. 2.6 GPA out of university. 4 years later, working in supply chain management, making 6 figures. I'm lucky because I enjoy what I do. Could have been much worse. Story 32. Database analyst, doing a bunch of SQL and SSRS reporting, amongst other things. Unless by graduated you mean university, which I never went to. Story 33. Went to a very easy-to-get-into media arts college, now living and supporting myself in the LA area. Not making a whole lot, but I get by. Story 34. The ex-president of Mexico copied his thesis, so people who have bad grades are the bosses of the smart students. Story 35. For my bachelor's, I've managed to graduate, barely. Now I'm in a rather comfy job, okay pay, with which I can put enough into savings. Story 36. I got an academic suspension from college, but eventually went back to finish a 4-year degree. That counts. Story 37. I'm good. Married, house, 2 cars, gainfully employed, savings, retirement. Story 38. Working asset protection for Macy's and just enlisted into the Marine Corps. Story 39. Pretty poopy life, but would have happened if I got good grades or not. Story 40. Working, almost debt-free, great career. Story 41. 6-figure job, laughing, crying. Story 42. Working in a factory. Story 43. Too poor for the internet. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.